So if I'm the attorney for realtor.com here, the first thing I would ask is, hey, can we inspect your CRM and see what you actually did with these leads?
Ah,
You you
yes.
you, you said it right on because if you're not getting educated about local real estate and national real estate trends and news and anything going on in the industry, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole here with Lisa Chinatti. Byron again, jet setting up and down the East Coast, but don't worry, the grinders, we probably shouldn't say grinders now, there's going to be a lot of jokes. We're here to deliver knowledge heading into the holiday weekend. I want to hear what you think about that in the comments. Lisa, you're back from the Tom Ferry Summit. Before we jump into some incredible news here about Sitzer from the Sitzer Burnett case, now having a startup to compete with real estate agents, shocking, maybe a little hypocritical. We've got agents filing a lawsuit about fake leads. We've got NAR appealing the DOJ probe. You're back from the Tom Ferry Summit. What's your biggest takeaway from the summit, Lisa? Tell me a little bit about that. You were there for 3 days in Dallas, probably sweating your butt off. How'd it go?
So an amazing event, as always. Got to connect with some really great people. One of the things that I'll share is you and Byron missed out. The number of people that came up to me and expressed appreciation for the podcast and said that they watch it every single week was humbling. So that was really cool. And you boys missed out on that opportunity to connect with some great folks. The event itself was really stellar. I think, as always, Tom and the organization do a great job putting together a top-notch event. Biggest takeaways, obviously, lots of focus on listings and generating listings and converting listings. I was proud of the organization for not really putting too much emphasis. There wasn't a ton of talk about NAR. There wasn't a ton of talk about like any of that kind of stuff. And it felt like back to the days where it's like, hey, how do we get agents to build businesses? How do we get them into action? How do we inspire them and help them think a little bit bigger? So that was really kind of fun to see. Energy, of course, always, electric and exciting.
I'm glad to hear that because the past couple of weeks, the amount of bitching and moaning and complaining about this NAR settlement and the lawsuit, it's stopping people from actually selling houses. So I think that's a great tack by the organization. No surprise. Glad you enjoyed yourself. How'd Dan Oneil do in the role play battle? You were judging that. Did I see that correctly?
I did. I was judging role play all 3 days. And what I'll share is so that was probably maybe one of my highlights, because I think in the industry, we often think that men are the better scripters. And so it was really cool to get to the end. And it was 4 women and Jeff Mays up on the stage. Carolyn Young and I were judging. Dan did amazing. He's phenomenal at what he does. I think what I'll share is, and Carolyn and I spoke about this behind the scenes, the way that the first 2 days were structured with one person going first and then feedback from the judges really gave the person who went second in both of those situations kind of an upper hand, because they were able to make pivots on the fly. And you've been on that stage before.
Yes.
When you stand there in front of 5,000, 6,000 people and you just feel all those people looking at you, as much as you can be prepared, as much as you know it, it is a totally different experience once you walk out on that stage and see all of those people there. So I think Dan got a little bit jittery, and I think he got the butterflies in his belly and got a little bit nervous and froze up a bit, but he did amazing. And at the end, anybody who's interested in some scripts and objection handlers should go watch it, because the women did an amazing job and had some really great takeaways for the audience.
I mean, you're absolutely right there that it does get a little more nerve-wracking. I remember I did this like the first time they did it, and I won against Carolyn Young, who was no joke. And I didn't look at the stage. I looked down. I turned around, because a role play it's not about looking at the people. It's about you're on the phone most of the time, or it's like a 1 or a 2 off. So that's really great advice you gave there. Very cool. Glad you found it helpful. Let's jump into the news here. So I want to start off with this story broke last night. And there's a new startup in real estate, right? And the most distinguishing feature, because this looks like a recycled business model to me. I want to be very clear. It's that Josh Sitzer is the co-founder. That's the same Sitzer from the Sitzer Burnett lawsuit that ended with the verdict on Halloween night last year. And the name of the company, it's called Landian, a combination of land and guardian. Sounds like he took Zillow's naming. You ever heard Rich Barton explain how they came up with the name for Zillow? So it looks like he's ripping off Zillow with how they're coming up with the name. I think the name sucks. And he told at TechCrunch, which is like one of those big tech startup things. I think it's the biggest one in the area. If you don't know what it is, Google it. The thought behind this is due to the anti-competitive structure of the industry before the lawsuit, I, as a seller, was effectively coerced into paying 3% of my home's selling price to a buyer's agent in order to achieve a successful sale. While hiring agents is a choice of many, I don't believe anyone should be bullied into paying for undesired services due to unfair industry practices. And it's a flat fee model. We've seen this before. They're going to be charging $49 for each home tour, $199 for an offer prep session. There's a service package of $1,799 that includes up to 5 home tours and up to 2 offer prep sessions. And then they have like an a la carte basis. Ricky Carruth had a pretty interesting reaction to this. I want to hear your reaction. I've got an opinion on this as well. What do you think about Landian, the next failed startup in real estate?
Well, so the one thing that I think is super important is the fees aren't even due unless the consumer buys the home. Like, it's not like we're paying $49 up front for every home tour, right? So
great point.
A buyer could sign a contract, tour 10 homes, never buy one, and the agent gets paid nothing. Like, just be clear. So here's my takes. You're correct. People have done this. They've tried it before, right? There've been discount models. There's been flat fee models. None of them are still in existence for a reason. But I do believe that they are still saying quite clearly that all the folks that are conducting these home tours and writing the offers are going to be licensed real estate agents. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I would imagine so. Let me verify that. Keep going, and I'll find this out here.
And so my question is, like, so how many agents do any of us know where it's going to be feasible to be sitting in an office and waiting to work for $49 for a property tour? And you're talking, you could have drive time of a half an hour in each direction just to get there. And then $49 doesn't even cover the amount of time that you're driving back and forth, the amount of time that you're actually showing the property. I think it's flawed. I think $199 for an offer strategy session where the person drafting the offer may never have seen the home, doesn't know the market conditions, doesn't know the true subtleties to working with the consumer in their particular situation. My full honest opinion, I see an opening for future litigation of a whole different variety. Like, am I wrong?
No, I mean it's just the whole thing here is you see this and it's like, wow, big surprise. This guy comes out, he's looking to cash in on his settlement, probably because he didn't make that much money from the settlement. It all went to the attorneys, right? I think that's number one. And I look at this model here. I mean, the list of companies is a very long one that's failed at this. I mean, you have,
Yep.
I see them kind of get reincarnated with the same people in our marketplace, where you see one agent who's a flat fee model broker where they have like the MLS placement listings. Then that company fails, and they go to another one and another one. So there's some people that just do that stuff, and there's always going to be the order takers that are out there. The third co-founder said this, and this is one of the things I don't think they really get. His name's Neil Batra, and he said, "My bet is following the NAR settlement, most agents will convert to from relying solely on the traditional model based on speculation and higher fees to incorporating the Landian flat fee model." That's incorrect. You know what most agents are doing, Lisa? They're getting part-time jobs. They're getting jobs outside of real estate, so they don't even know what they're dealing with here. And they're hoping they're going to attract agents doing that. I mean, this has happened throughout time, and I forget who it was. I
Yep.
think it was Gary Keller said that there's nothing that's happened at this point that hasn't already happened before in history, and this is another
Yeah.
great example. Like, history will tell you how to learn from your mistakes, and clearly, Josh Sitzer has not learned from the mistakes of the other discount and flat free brokerages.
Well, don't you find it? It's when I first saw the news break yesterday, it was just curious to me that the industry that he tried to take down is now the industry where he's clearly trying to build wealth, right? Like it just, I don't know. I don't know exactly the words to put behind it, but it just seems so ironic, right? The industry that you tried to take down is now an industry where he's going to try to earn a ton of money. Um, there was also interesting takes about how his speculation about how Zillow and the big players will never support it because of the way that they make money. His whole dialogue on it was just bananas.
Yeah, so I looked him up on LinkedIn. I wanted to get this guy's background to see what he actually has done. So he's the chief business officer of Unanimous AI, which they apparently were awarded a contract from the Air Force at one point. So those are pretty lucrative. I mean, that's a good business model. Um,
Yep.
and then before that's been the past 7 years. Before that, he ran EVP Sports Operations, which was another like AI play. That was since 2019, and he was the chief marketing officer. And then before that, he worked for Sprint. So I mean, it's and he was VP of marketing and sales there as well. Went to Cornell. So I mean, the guy obviously is like, got to be smart to get into Cornell. I don't care. I mean, whether
Yeah.
what you do with that, whole nother story. But I
Yeah.
always think of like Andy from The Office who went to Cornell and he was a total numbskull. So this is the whole thing. Just seems like he's looking to cash in. He's looking to take advantage of an industry that feels down. A lot of people are underestimating real estate agents right now and how they're going to react to this settlement, because there's folks that like you, like your organization. I know we're doing the same thing. You're talking about the Tom Ferry Summit, that are rallying and vowing to get
Yeah.
even better and show people, hey, there's a reason why real estate agents have been employed as long as they have. And no matter what the settlement's happening here, I'm on a mission to help people and have a big business. And you're going to be surprised to see who rises out of this settlement in the next, not like 6 months, I'm talking the next like year or two. It's going to be very interesting because there's a lot of people that have taken this personally and are on a mission right now to go help a whole lot of folks and get paid appropriately for doing it.
Yeah. No, I agree. There was some interesting conversation at the summit. I don't remember who started the conversation. I sat next to her at something, and it was a woman. I wish I could remember her name, or
Must be very
but
memorable.
I'm bad with names and faces. But there was a whole interesting conversation about the research that's been done about why real estate is such a hard industry to interrupt, and why consumers continue to go to real estate agents when they historically have been options that have allowed consumers to conduct the transaction without using a real estate agent. And the studies show the fear around making mistakes in it because it
Mhm.
is your single biggest asset, right? And that there's a certain level of trust that it's very difficult to place in somebody that you don't know, but building the relationship with a real estate agent actually allows trust to kind of develop throughout, which I think we've always kind of known, but
Mhm.
it's interesting to kind of understand how it plays out with the consumer research that's kind of gone into it, because you're 100% correct. If you look at real estate and compared to travel, right? I know we talk about like Travelocity and Expedia and all of those other services that have disrupted the travel
Mhm.
industry, and Netflix versus Blockbuster. Yeah, the technology that disrupt real estate has existed for a long time, but there's just something different with the consumer mindset. And I don't think a flat fee service is going to actually play to that. You're not going to be able to build trust in the person who's going to help you. I think, like anything, there's going to be consumers who maybe have a certain level of expertise already because they've navigated buying and selling a home before. Or I can see investors going that route, right? If they're not looking for off market deals and they're just looking for stuff that's available online. I can also see it getting exploited a little bit. You and I are both Zillow and Realtor.com partners. How often do you get a call come through on those that say, hey, I just want to go see the house because my agent's not available? And what's that service
Like
where real estate
Xiaomi
agent?
or Show Me, like there's a couple apps that do this.
Yeah,
It's something like that.
yeah, and those are agent to agent, right?
Mhm.
Where the agent can say, "Hey, I need showing
It's like
coverage."
$50.
Ironic, though, right? Like, is it now that all of a sudden something like this can actually kind of replace that? Where, and now instead of having just that coverage being agent to agent, that coverage can kind of become consumer to agent. I don't know, just an interesting thing to kind of think about with it.
Well, and like, I mean, if you remember, Redfin tried like automated offer writing a few years ago, where it said that you had to fill
Yep.
out like 50 questions or some
Right.
number like that of how you're going to craft your offer, and it didn't go over well. And the things people don't think about, and think about the novice home buyer, right? And so I don't. Do you have like stucco issues as an example up in Massachusetts, where there's stucco remediation, homes built with stucco? We've had a big problem down here. Some people don't know about this stuff. So when you're thinking about inspections you want to elect, like, do we get stucco? Do I need to get a septic inspection, on-site
Right.
well, like all this stuff? And when you mentioned trust, and you also mentioned Blockbuster, Netflix, and travel agents. You know what the difference is between that and real estate? Those are very short-term decisions. Real estate's a very long-term decision. It's the key to
Yep.
wealth building, as documented so many times for the average person in the U.S. So that's probably why it's a bigger decision. Sure, maybe the process is similar to like booking things and arranging things like a travel agent. That's where it ends, because once that vacation's over, like, have you ever had a crappy vacation, Lisa? I know I have. I'm like, great, I'm never doing this
Yeah.
again, and you forget about
Yep.
it. But it's not the same when you've bought an asset that you're attached to and have a 30-year note in most cases attached to it. So there's a big difference here. And look, history is spoken. We're going to come back on the pod here. When this fails, you better well know we're going to be talking about it.
Yeah.
Well,
Landian.
speaking of lawsuits, Lisa, I want to go to another lawsuit. It feels like all we talk about is lawsuits on this show lately. So on Friday, right after our pod, 8 real estate agents filed a lawsuit against Realtor.com's parent company Move, and it's a class action lawsuit. And what they basically said was they were from 6 states: California, Nevada, Florida, Washington, Georgia, and New York. They filed it in LA Superior Court, and the lawsuit alleges that Move engaged in fraudulent practices by selling fake leads to real estate agents through the following networks: Realtor.com, ListHub, and UpNest. And the plaintiffs claimed that NAR was complicit in the scheme due to its close association with Realtor.com and Move. And they also named News Corp and OpCity. The key allegations were that, and this is what the complaint stated: defendants failed and refused to take action to vet, legitimize, or confirm the identity of these so-called, quote, leads, and deliberately sold fake leads and false leads, along with other leads, which range from highly questionable to legitimate. I do a lot of work with Realtor.com. So do you. We've sold many homes from Realtor. I mean, $1 million plus properties. What do you think about this, Lisa?
Dude, so interestingly,
Dude.
this came out while I was in Dallas, and the very next day we were out to dinner with Damian Eales and Mark Graham and the team over at Realtor.com. So some interesting kind of conversations around this topic as well. I know I can't swear on here, but what the insert Haley or whoever can add a bleep right there. So I mean, I think everybody knows when you buy leads, right? It's no different than buying Google. It's no different than buying Zillow. You're never, ever going to have 100% conversion. Never, ever going to have a 50% conversion, right? And I think we all have to admit that even 20% conversion, 2 out of 10, is
That would be
not
incredible.
realistic. Right. And so I think you have to go in understanding that, do we get fake leads sometimes? Absolutely. Can we blame realtor.com for that? No, right? I don't think, and just like you get them on your website, right? Like, how many times do you get, like, I've had we laugh, right? There'll be times where I'm sitting on the sales floor and I hear one of the inside sales reps pick up the phone and start saying a name, and they don't get what they're saying. And like the other group of us on the sales floor just bust out laughing, right? And you've been there.
It's like an episode of The Simpsons where they used to prank call the bar, and it's like, hey,
Yeah.
is Ivana Tinkle there, or like whatever it is. So yes,
We had Hugh Janus come through the other day, and it got one of the reps, right? Like,
oh my god, I would have died. Oh, it's fantastic.
but like, seriously. So, I mean, we get them on our websites. I get them through Zillow seller leads, right?
Mhm.
Like you get them through any lead gen platform. And I think the kicker is, I don't think anyone's ever telling you that they're going to be 100% legit. Nobody ever tells you you're going to close homes from 100% of these consumers. I think the other thing that I saw when I was reading the lawsuit is that they alleged that the leads were sold to multiple agents.
That's
Yes,
actually one of their products, Lisa. They tell you they have a fast lead service that goes to multiple agents. And
yes,
that can be, if you have a great inside sales team or a great system, you can
yep.
crush on those for a lower cost.
100%. Yep, absolutely. And it's also, I mean, you and I both know consumers might start in one zip code and dude, your eyeballs just got weird. And they might submit an inquiry in one zip code, and then all of a sudden they move to a different zip code, and you're not paying for leads in that zip code. It is what it is, right?
Mhm.
Like, we all have to understand that. I think the other side of it is everybody, agents, you, me, there's been times where we've made mistakes with conversion, right? And yes, can I get salty at, my lead partner? Maybe. But do I also have to take some accountability for it internally and really start to question and ask myself, right? You can go back to the stats. Was it 40 back in the day before all these direct connects?
Mhm.
I think the stat was that like 40% or more of
It was
all
over
real estate
50.
leads never got called, right? And
Mhm.
then it was something like 65% were called like one or two times and then never called again. And you and I both know A, speed to lead is absolutely important with all of these.
Mhm.
B, the average sale, it takes 8 to 12 points of contact before we're actually going to even turn that into anything, right? And so I really go to with some of these folks, is there any internal self accountability for did they actually work these leads in the right way? Right. And, the one thing that I'll give realtor.com credit for is if I ever bring up anything, like there'll be times, I'm sure you get it too, where you get like 50 leads with one phone number in it and it's spam. And I just reach out to them and they're like, yep, we're blocking that person. Right. And they'll take those, they'll take those actions and do those things if we bring it to their attention.
So if I'm the attorney for realtor.com here, the first thing I would ask is, hey, can we inspect your CRM and see what you actually did with these leads?
Ah, yes.
You said it right on, because forget, these agents. I mean, I don't know who they are. I mean, they're probably listed in the suit somewhere. That's fine. Let's take it to a different level where you get like an agent that you're working with and like, oh, these leads suck, Lisa. And then you go into their CRM and they've called them once. They don't text. They don't email. And to your
Yep.
point, you got to get to typically double digit contact attempts. 7 or more is the magic number. 8 to 12 is usually where it happens. So that's factual, and that's any sales industry. On top of that, what are they saying to them? What's their script like? You don't know what they're saying to
Totally.
people. That really matters. And a lot of folks, they think they don't need scripts. Those are the agents that don't sell a lot of houses. So I would love just to go in and understand that. And you said this perfectly. When this happens, you got to have that meeting with yourself. What am I
Yep.
doing wrong? What am I doing differently? And when you have that kind of mindset, you're going to convert whatever leads happen. So, this to me is just a dog shit lawsuit that's out there. I mean, realtor.com, I've had issues with deliverability with them, and they made it right and they analyzed the account and they showed the data. So they're very transparent. NAR sold realtor.com, I don't know how long ago. Like it's not even affiliated with them anymore. It's ridiculous. I mean, it just seems like we're in this era now where it's like, and maybe this happened thanks to our buddy Sitzer and his startup, where that one lawsuit hit, and I've never seen so many lawsuits in real estate in the 20 plus years I've been doing this until the past 12 months. I don't know about you, but it's incredible. And if I'm an agent looking to actually buy some leads and get into the internet lead business, realtor.com would be one of the first recommendations I'd have for people. And yes, they do sell leads to multiple folks. That's a great opportunity if your systems are built right. So I don't know that we need to talk about this much more. I mean, you're going to get fake leads. I mean, you type like the F word into anyone's CRM, there's going to be a long list of leads that pop up. I mean, think of like a controversial character, and everything's in there. Like it's ridiculous. So it's going to happen. That happens anywhere because people want the information, or maybe they want to have access to the website. And if you do the right job following up with those people, maybe they turn into something real down the line. That's happened to us as well. So it's silly lawsuit here, in my view. Sounds like we're both in agreement on that. So speaking of lawsuits, NAR decided to finally get their head out of their ass, and they're now going to appeal the DOJ probe to the Supreme Court. I know they have they filed a writ with the Supreme Court. It's going to be by October 10th in the ongoing appeal. The documents were filed on Thursday, and it said that when the DOJ said that they could reopen, or excuse me, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals said that the DOJ could reopen its investigation into the trade group. And that comes after an appeals court denied the request for a rehearing in July. Unfortunately, I feel like there are some political winds here affecting this, Lisa. Do you think they're going to make any headway with this? I mean, a lot of it kind of depends what happens in November, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, my gut says nothing changes. I think, but I don't know. I don't think anything changes. I think it's kind of full steam ahead at this point. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they're fighting, but I feel like this is just too little too late from NAR. And
Yep.
it's like,
The
great. Of
ship has
course they're
sailed.
going to be doing this.
Yep. Yeah, this is what they should have done much sooner than what they've actually done it.
Yeah, and the leadership there. I mean, I think they are in some real trouble with some. I mean, they now appointed Nakia Wright, the CEO. I'm surprised she even took the job. To be honest with you, that's not a job I would want. Like, I mean, that's a tough job right now. And we're seeing the DOJ. Did Byron send you that article? It was about title. Where was that here? We didn't talk about this before the show, but I believe they're starting to talk about like title companies now, and the DOJ is opening an investigation there. It just seems to be the trend with this DOJ. And the only thing that could happen here, in my view, that would actually change something is we know what happened before. We've talked about this on the pod here, where in 2019, NAR and DOJ, they agreed to a settlement, signed off, done. Then a new administration came in after the election, literally like it's actually much closer to the election now than it was in 2019. And the new DOJ decided to reopen this up. So the only thing that could happen here is if, the administration that gets elected is part of the 2019 administration, because it's the same candidate, right? Maybe that gets reversed and the DOJ backs off. I'd be buying as much as I could if I'm NAR. I think that's the only move here that they should be doing, is just buying time.
Yeah, to be clear, the issue with the title insurance, so it was in Washington, D.C., and it was because real estate agents were steering, and they actually used the word steering. So, whenever steering is used, that you're talking about some pretty serious stuff, that they were steering them to favored title companies in exchange for a share of that firm's profit. And that within real estate is illegal, right? It's very, very tightly regulated with what we can do with lenders and with title companies, and how the MSAs or, whatever it is going to shake out against those. And so they found, and this particular case that you're referencing was just in Washington, D.C. for now. And it was where the title companies offered real estate agents direct payments in exchange for customer referrals. And it says at least one of the title companies also rewarded agents' referral business with lavish yacht parties on Chesapeake Bay and some other stuff. And I think, you and I both know our title companies sometimes throw title event or company client events and that kind of stuff. And it's always a very, very fine line. And you and I know this working with, title stuff. And I think, Zillow has even kind of got to be aware of it with some of what they're doing with the super app and Zillow Home Loans and that kind of stuff, right? But it's clear that they're really trying to tighten up on this to help consumers not, you know what I mean?
Well, RESPA compliance is real.
Yes.
And a lot of folks, and unfortunately, it's again, agents tend to not get informed and do things, right? And so, I mean, it's no different than, let's say you were an agent, you said, hey, you know what? I'm going out and I'm going to get my mortgage license and my insurance license, and I'm a one-stop shop for everything. Well, there's compliance you got to follow there. And that's a very lower level to what we're talking about here. And no matter what happens, Lisa, unfortunately, I just feel like people they're going to break the rules. They're not going to pay attention. And that's how you get in a lot of trouble. So we've been saying this for a while, that you've got to know everything about the business and assume that the people you deal with know nothing and be the expert. That's what being a knowledge broker means. So, with this DOJ stuff, I mean, the DOJ is going to do what they want to do. Whoever's going to get elected, it's going to get elected. Our job as agents is to control the controllables and understand how we can drive business forward in the market. And if anyone gets anything about this from this pod this week, that is the most important thing right now, because there's so much noise in the marketplace from the settlement and all this other stuff going on. And our job as agents is to talk to people, educate them, meet with them, and help them buy and sell real estate. It's not that complicated, because if it was, I wouldn't be qualified to do it. I'm not that smart of a guy, but I know what my job is, and I'm going to execute on it relentlessly. And I hope the people listening are going to focus on that instead of all this other nonsense going on.
Agreed. And what I'll add is that the biggest thing that I always tell folks is to remember that your job is as the fiduciary. And by definition, that means putting the needs and the best interest of the consumer in front of your own needs and your own best interests. And that's where this particular thing with the steering into a title company for kickbacks comes into play, right? Because in those instances, agents are putting their own best interests in front of what might be the better deal or the better company or the better service for a client in order to get kickbacks. And that's what RESPA is designed to prevent, right? You and I both know our MSAs with our mortgage lenders have followed very, very tight guidelines for what has to be done, right? Whether it's a certain amount of logos or a certain amount of the percentage of an advertisement has to be dedicated to each party in there in order for it to be co-sponsored and co-branded. And the guidelines are there for a reason. And I'm just super passionate. Again, agents should be following it. Remember that they're a fiduciary, and keep the definition of a fiduciary front and center.
Well said, Lisa, as always. So we've got one last thing we're going to cover here. And, this to me is, it's something that I've got a problem with. I'm going to be very clear. So I got an email from someone, and it was about Bright MLS data. So I'm a member of Bright. You're not. They're the second largest MLS in the country. And they have different vendors, and they have data feeds where you get like agent contact information, IDX feeds, all this stuff. And Bright asked this particular company for a routine review, right? Sounds good, right? People review stuff all the time. And this company was informed about a week ago that their use of agent and office contact information was contrary to the terms of the Bright MLS license agreement, and that those fields would be removed from the data they are supplying as of early September. And this company had a call with the EVP for customer advocacy to get clarification. And here are the bullet points from this conversation. The compliance staff had completely turned over from when they got the original license, when that was approved. They are removing agent and office contact information from all external data feeds in Bright. That seems to be a problem here. When asked what sort of external application could receive this contact information, Bright said they were unable to think of any. Any use of Bright data to recruit agents was specifically targeted. They were aware of NAR's policies mandating availability of this data and felt their license agreement superseded them. And this effort was not driven by the board of directors, but rather the MLS staff. And they did not highlight any abuse of the data. And so now what's happening is you got all this data that's out there that you're supposed to be, we pay a fee to Bright. Bright's not cheap, it costs money. And now they're saying, hey, we can't use this data. And it looks like it was made by the staff, not the board. And, now that, and there was a similar thing that happened with the Northwest MLS. And they put those restrictions in place, and they were subsequently dropped. And, if you look at the environment now, right, think about the NAR settlement, right? You can't communicate offers of compensation on the MLS. Sure, we're fully compliant. So what you can do is you can send out email blasts to people about local agents in the area that might be selling a whole lot of homes in this particular neighborhood. You can, having access to that data is probably important for sellers to communicate if there's an offer of compensation or not, or letting them know that they're open-minded to it, whatever the policy is. So this seems very counterintuitive, one, to NAR policies. Two, Bright says we supersede their license, which I don't really understand how that works. And three, there was no abuse. And now we've got this restrictive environment that just got a whole lot more restrictive in a regional MLS. What do you think about this?
Well, I guess my first question to you is, so are they also restricting that information from going out. Like, so one of the requirements, if you think about Zillow, right,
Mm-hmm.
or any of the sources with IDX feed, is that the listing agent's name, office, contact information is included in the listing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that actually being impacted as well?
I don't know, because this is like, this is, I'm hearing this. We're not hearing this from Bright. I'm the member there. Why am I not finding out about this? And it looks like it was a staff decision. That's one of my first questions I have about this. I mean, this all happened in the past 48 hours. So that would be one of my questions. And, I think this whole, everyone's talking about transparency. And
Right,
that
that's
is
my
not
point.
transparent. So, like,
No.
you're creating all these roadblocks for consumers to get in touch with people, for agents to, try to sell the listings for their clients, or vice versa. Think about,
Correct.
you get a buyer, Lisa, and you know that, XYZ agent sells a whole bunch of homes in this particular town. And now you can't find out and get their contact info by searching them, and that you got to go through the MLS and do all this. That just creates more work for real estate agents.
Well, and to your point, and I think the thing that I worry about the most is that it actually removes the transparency for the consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to the discussion that we had about the DOJ, the reason that the listing agent's information was communicated out through Zillow and all the IDX feeds was in order to increase transparency for the consumer, so that the consumer wouldn't have to retain a buyer agent if they wanted to go direct to the listing agent. If we're talking about taking away the feed that has all of that contact information, we've actually created an even bigger roadblock for the consumer. Never mind the work for you as an agent to communicate things, to do the marketing efforts, but it seems so counterproductive.
We said on this pod a while ago that the MLSs hold the power now, right? They've got
Yep.
and this is a great example of that. And this is a regional MLS. California's bigger, but that's one state, right? I think this one's a lot different
Yep.
because we've got DC, Virginia, Maryland, Jersey, Philadelphia, Delaware, right? These are, I mean, it's basically the Mid-Atlantic region, for better or
Yep.
for worse. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, that this is all about transparency. You're just not, it doesn't make any sense to me. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see more MLSs do this unless the people speak up and actually fight about it, because I think this is a decision made in a closed room by a staff member. I don't know what the authority is or how that works. I'm not well versed in that. What I do know is the membership needs to know. Imagine if you made a decision like this with your company and you didn't tell your agents and just rolled it out. Would it go well? Probably not.
Nope. And the kicker is you don't have another choice, right? There isn't another MLS that you could say.
We do not have a choice.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
The strong arming people, no mention. I mean, you think, like, say what you want about, some of these other companies that are out there. The people that actually get feedback, and like realtor.com has done a great job with this. They actually talk to people. Zillow's got an agent advisory board. Forget who's on it. They have an advisory board. These people have a board, and then the staff made the decision. Like, who? Like, I don't understand how that all works. It doesn't, it just doesn't seem right to me. And under the guise of a routine review to boot, I mean, that's just bad business.
Agreed. Well, I have a hard stop, so I think that's a great way to wrap up today's pod.
Happy Labor Day. You got some more labor ahead of you if you're in Bright, if you want to get information out to some of the other agents that are out there. Lisa, what are you doing Labor Day weekend? What goes on in the Chinatti household on Labor Day?
I'm actually going to be catching up on some work, believe it or not.
Well, you were probably partying it up at the Tom Ferry Summit all week at the and all the parties.
Not at all. I went out to dinner with realtor.com. I went out to dinner one other night, and then I was in bed early every night, up and networking starting at 7 a.m. for breakfast.
I'm just kidding around. I know you were doing that. Lisa's very responsible. So that's what we got. Labor Day weekend here is not very exciting. We got back to school on Monday, or Tuesday. That's always a blast. Get some knowledge, everybody. We'll catch you next week.
We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today. At BMX, we listen to what real estate professionals want and need. That's why our platform is filled with sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business. And that's why we launched BMX in a box with templates and scripts done for you, delivered each Friday. The best part? It's not coming from panel pontificators who bought their followers and don't sell any real estate. It's coming from top agents, team leaders, and content creators in the industry. It's education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. And now it includes editable templates and scripts so you can easily deliver that knowledge to your database. Every day, we continue to add more content into BMX, into our private Facebook community, content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. Do not wait any longer. Use code KNOWLEDGEBROKERS and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Use Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BMX.